Think of the prototypical horror mystery series. Got an image in your head? Chances are, it doesn't look anything like this. No, Mononoke is not standard fare in the horror genre. Where the typical entry is rife with jump scares, a bare-bones plot, and horribly one-dimensional characters, Mononoke offers a different style. One glance at the show's visuals should be all you need to know this probably isn't what you're used to. Before you say it's unfair to only compare it to the bad horror series, even good horror relies on dark, creepy atmospheres, mysterious worlds, and character intrigue. Combining elements of fantasy and horror with a historical setting, Mononoke takes these common threads and spins them into a wholly unique experience. It may not be for everybody, but it damn sure was for me. Today, Under the Scope, I took a look at Mononoke, a visually stunning series about evil spirits that offers a breath of fresh air in an otherwise repetitive genre. Mononoke's story is an interesting one. As a horror, it's certainly distinct, not quite falling under the blanket definition of the genre, yet still retaining some of its most important aspects, namely atmosphere. No, part of Mononoke's appeal is just how different it is, from the animation to the themes and general mood. Mostly set in feudal Japan, evil spirits called Mononoke roam the land, spreading terror in their wake. A mysterious man known only as the Medicine Seller has the power to vanquish these spirits, but first he must learn their form, truth, and reason. Armed only with his sword and sharp mind, the Medicine Seller travels the land in search of the vengeful Mononoke. With no overarching narrative or character backstory to speak of, the series isn't about the Medicine Seller or his travels. The real story lies in the Mononoke themselves. Interestingly, the true nature of the Mononoke is always left somewhat up in the air. They're evil spirits born out of ill karma and revenge, sure, but are they truly bad to the core, or were they simply dealt a poor hand in life? The Medicine Seller explains how Mononoke come to exist, and from the examples shown throughout the series, many of these spirits turn to this vengeful state out of the wrongdoing of others. In the first arc, the Mononoke are the spirits of babies killed before birth and stuffed in the walls, never having a chance to experience the outside world, which is all they ever wanted. Similarly, the final arc's Mononoke turns to revenge after others' betrayal. The intrigue behind the Mononoke is what makes the series work. It's not your typical mystery, where you're presented with a set of clues and try to piece the puzzle together before the big reveal at the end. Rather, Mononoke's mysteries unfold like a play, with each act sucking you into the story more and more. For the majority of each arc, the Medicine Seller plays the role of the silent observer, watching as the Mononoke's tale unravels. The final arc takes on a more classic detective mystery style, but it works, making an interesting point about the bystander effect in conjunction with murder. The series never becomes stale. Each arc feels distinct, with new themes and interactions. The Medicine Seller satisfying his checklist for each Mononoke never gets repetitive or tedious, a testament to how interesting the spirit stories were. That's not to say every arc was great. I personally didn't care much for the second one, but you have to appreciate how individual each was. They took the same premise and molded it into 5 unique experiences, covering a wide range of mature themes from murder and suicide to domestic abuse, forced abortion, and perhaps most of all, free will. Immediately, Mononoke's visuals jump out. The vibrant, textured backgrounds and designs make for a thoroughly unique atmosphere that's a perfect fit for the series' setting and culture. Beyond creating an engrossing atmosphere, though, the visuals actually progress the story and give it that sense of wonder and insanity. It's a series that rewards the highly attentive with an endless onslaught of symbolism and visual cues. For an example, let's go to the second to last arc. Immediately, you notice the color palette of this arc is far more subdued than before, not nearly as bright, with a gray hue to everything. Our first instances of real color come during the arc's incense game between the 4 suitors. As they smell the incense, they grow flushed with color depending on their emotional response to the scent. It's a great example of the synesthesia Mononoke constantly throws at you, using visuals to inform other sensory impressions, from smell to taste and even touch. Color's also used to set up the atmosphere and ultimately make a message about its setting, but we'll get to that later. The point is, Mononoke uses its vibrant art style rife with symbolism to establish its world and even progress the story. While some arcs are naturally better than others, each feels like its own narrative and not a monotonous retelling, thanks in large part to the gripping, intriguing stories behind each of the Mononoke. If there's one area that's difficult to discuss with this series, it's the characters, mostly because of the general absence of them. The only constant is the Medicine Seller, but again, he's not necessarily the focus of each arc. That title has to go to the Mononoke themselves. Perhaps this is where my biggest disappointment with the series lies. There's a major lack of explanation regarding the show's lore. The world's mechanics, in particular the sword spirit, are never given any explanation. We're just expected to take it all at face value. The medicine seller exudes mystery, but we never learn anything about him. Some backstory would have been nice, but at the same time, I understand that wasn't what the series was going for. Much like Mushishi, Mononoke isn't concerned with the history or identity of its main character. Its focus is on the individual stories, never breaking away from that promise. The medicine seller is a classic case of the rule of cool. We're willing to buy all these crazy powers without any explanation because he's a fucking badass. Never while watching did I actively think I wished we knew more about the sword or his backstory. That came after. The supporting cast is largely forgettable with a couple notable exceptions here and there, particularly the woman in the third arc. It's filled with eccentric personalities to say the least, making for an excellent contrast to the medicine seller's calm, collected persona. Make no mistake, the supporting cast is just that. The Mononoke have to have a victim, and the side characters help ground the story, even if they all sort of blend together. I really appreciated how they strongly implied Chiyo from the final arc as a descendant or even reincarnation of Kaio from the second, one of the series' many brilliant touches. I won't mention any of the Mononoke specifically to avoid spoilers, but beyond their intriguing motivations and identities, what really impressed me was how varied they were. Some were ghosts, others abstract thoughts, and even one who was part of a living person. It's a great touch that kept me guessing and made each feel fresh. At only 12 episodes, I could have watched another 24 and never gotten bored. Not because of the medicine seller or the supporting cast, but rather the Mononoke. As long as they kept giving each a unique identity and narrative, it's a story I might not ever tire of. As I mentioned earlier, Mononoke's visuals are what really make it stand out. The unique style is an aesthetic eyegasm, and the visual storytelling makes for countless moments of terrific symbolism and character insight. Most impressive would have to be its use of color. The lighter palette, consisting almost exclusively of pastels, fits the show's tone and setting exceptionally well, beyond just being pretty to look at. This isn't a horror mystery concerned with a dark, terrifying atmosphere. Rather, the series aims for a more mystical feel, giving it that sense of culture and time. This idea really shines through in the final arc, which skips forward to Showa-era Japan, likely around the 1960s. Here, the color palette is much more subdued and drab. Instead of the bright, vibrant colors we saw in the other arcs, we now get a collection of grays and browns, highlighting a lack of mystique in this industrialized society. The crowd being nothing but mannequins furthers this notion of the lifelessness and loss of a certain magical quality in this modern world. Mononoke is the type of series you could watch only for the visuals and leave completely satisfied. The art influences everything from the story to the world, creating an immersive atmosphere unlike most others I've seen. Sound-wise, Mononoke's OST does an exceptional job setting the mood. You probably won't remember any of it after the show, but it serves its role to fill the background. Several of the tracks immediately raise the tension and give off that unsettling vibe like any good horror ST should. Each uses a series of woodwind and string instruments to match the show's historical setting. Of particular note is the track Samishige, played during the more emotional scenes. It's a beautiful piece that really stands on its own. Overall, Mononoke's soundtrack is filled with excellent companion pieces that set the atmosphere well. What steals the show, however, is the art style. Directed by Kenji Nakamura of Gatchaman Crowds and Suritama fame, Mononoke is a textbook example of using visuals to inform the story, a powerful tool I wish more series would try to replicate. How many times can I use the word unique before I sound like a broken record? Mononoke's combination of visuals, atmosphere, and horror stories make it stand out. More importantly, however, it works. It never fails to entertain, providing a fresh story every few episodes. Each arc concludes with a satisfying finish, and the show goes off on a high note with one of its best arcs. Mononoke doesn't hold anything back. It can get damn violent at times, and the occasional shots of corpses and blood are fairly disturbing. Rather than used as a tool for cheap jump scares, though, these moments function to feed off an unnerving vibe. Chances are you won't find Mononoke particularly terrifying while you watch, but I'd be surprised if you didn't walk away from it feeling deeply unsettled. So with that, I award Mononoke an approval rating of watch, with a definite recommendation to do so, and an overall score of 4.1, well, Mononoke out of 5. Some arcs are better than others, and if you don't afford it your undivided attention, you're likely to miss something. Even so, Mononoke is the rare, indelible horror anime, relying on its unique visual flair not to swipe a few cheap thrills, but rather tell a thought-provoking story that's fearful on a much deeper level. If you're looking for something similar to Mononoke, you'll absolutely want to watch Mushishi, as both are episodic stories focusing on a mysterious travel in search of spirits and use their visuals to set a unique atmosphere, even if their styles are different. Also check out Gankatsuo, the Count of Monte Cristo, for another supernatural thriller with a similar art style and visual flair. And that'll do it for me. Big announcement, if you like listening to people talk about anime, go subscribe to the Anime Association, a podcast I recently joined with a bunch of other anime YouTubers you're probably familiar with. You can click the link here or in the description to go to our channel and follow us on Twitter at AXA Podcast. Our first episode's already out, so what are you waiting for? If you're feeling particularly generous and want to help a broke college student out, please consider taking a look at my Patreon page. Shout out to Small Crits Anime Critic for donating. It really means a lot. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video and feel free to follow me on Twitter at UTS Reviews. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.